I would like to introduce another colleague. Mike Lopez is an extension program specialist, and he's based in College Station. Mike's background is in urban planning and does a lot with helping make communities more active and creating cultures of wellness in those communities. And he's going to talk to you about one of our banner physical activity programs called Walk Across Texas. And as you consider how you're going to get started with your internship hours and what you're going to do to really hone in and accomplish those Walk Across Texas is going to be one of those programs that you could probably pick up very easily and implement in a community to make lasting and now evidence-based change in that community. So Mike, we're glad you're here, and I'll turn it over to you.
Good morning. Andy, appreciate the introduction, and I also appreciate everyone's time and attention this morning. I think we got a couple of future trainings, and I think you'll see me again. Well, not I think, you'll see me again on the last day as well, once your training's kind of wrapping up. But I'm really excited to kind of do a brief overview of, as Andy mentioned, one of the potentially first programs as well as great opportunities as you're considering what type of programs you'd like to implement as part of your volunteer hours, required hours, as well as leading into some of your programming once you are a Master Wellness volunteer. And so, again, this is just going to be a primer and an introduction to it. We only have a brief 45 minutes, but I really like this opportunity. The couple of first sessions were really foundational and knowledge based, and now we're really diving into some of the weeds and some of the programs that are great opportunities for y'all to implement in your community if you're interested in physical activity in general. So I'm really excited to be here, as well as some of the future presentations as well. Actually, Learn, Grow, Eat, Go, which you'll hear this afternoon, was one of the first programs when I came on with Extension in 2011. And so it's something very near and dear to my heart. I, at the time, focused on the Walk Across Texas component of that, and now have the opportunity to provide statewide support for the programs and many of the agents and folks in the room. So I think I got one of the greatest gigs around, and I'm really excited to share. As Andy mentioned, we had a couple of great updates this past year, and I'm really excited to highlight some of those. My contact information is on this slide, just in case there are any questions offline that you'd like to ask, or as you're going through the training, don't hesitate to reach out over the next couple of weeks, as well as you're considering or even beginning to implement either Walk Across Texas or potentially another physical activity-based program. Happy to help in any way that I can. But just to run through quick, the next 40 now minutes for our session, we're going to do a quick review and context, a little bit of background. I'm not going to spend too much time on that, but I just want to get us all at a foundational level of where we're at in terms of physical activity. We're going to run through the distinct versions of Walk Across Texas, of the Walk Across Texas program, and in particular, which two audiences and what version of the program you should use in an adult audience compared to a youth audience, since they are a little bit different. So we'll talk about those, we'll define those, so we feel really comfortable with the differences between the two. We're going to describe some tasks, some best practices, some recommendations from myself to successfully implement Walk Across Texas. And I hope y'all are able to take your lunchtime as well as some other opportunities with your host county extension agent to talk through what that looks like on a local level. Kind of my view is kind of that 3,000 foot view. And I hear some things and some best practices, and certainly work with agents across the state, but it might be completely different on how it's implemented best in your county and with your particular audiences. So there is that slight caveat, but I will describe some tasks that typically rise up to the top when we're looking at themes on how to successfully implement the program. And then we'll also talk about some best practices for promotion of Walk Across Texas. And then we'll wrap up with some opportunities on where we could go to learn more and to get additional training, additional resources, and have additional conversations to move forward. So just a quick review and context. Again, I'm not going to, I just want you to have this on the slide deck as well as in your resource packet for your repository of information as you're potentially going out with and engaging audiences around the conversation of why physical activity is important, why a program like Walk Across Texas might be important in a work site, as part of a worksite wellness program, as part of a county-based program, a community-based program. And so I just want you to have this and this link for you to go there and learn more. I won't spend too much time on that, but just a quick review on where we are in the physical activity world. And apologize for those in the room who have seen this many times before, but generally most of us know we should be physically active, right? And this is a study asking Americans. It was a large survey that went out, and the responses were generally we know and acknowledge that we should walk more or be more active, as well as our children as well. So the youth we might engage as well. So we know that, and we've probably heard it many, many times, either through mass media, health education programs, etc. We also know and consistently see this in the literature that most of us are not. Our leisure time physical activity habits haven't changed in the past 20, 30 years. Self-reported data from CDC has us typically around 50% of those that are meeting the physical activity guidelines and recommendations. That is self-reported. Once you start looking into the literature and the research, with people wearing wearables or something that's a little bit more objectively collecting data, it typically hovers around 10 to 20% who are typically meeting those. And I don't mean to say that lightly. There are a wide variety of reasons, and a lot of those reasons for that are listed on the slide. Most of the time, other activities that might take up our time, don't have enough energy. The space that I typically live in is not having a supportive environment that's encouraging of activity and encouraging of that behavior, whether that be an infrastructure issue, like a physical infrastructure issue, so neighborhoods not walkable, an accessibility issue where there's not a lot of places within walking distance of home or work, etc., or the knowledge and awareness of those possible resources within a certain distance of a home. It could also be something more connected to the social environment. So our perceptions of maybe our neighborhoods or our physical environments that we could possibly engage in activity. So those might be potential barriers to us. So most of us are not, just across the board. And then unfortunately, simply telling people to be active doesn't generally work as well. And I say that generally with a caveat, but in public health, especially since the Surgeon General report on physical activity and health in the mid-90s came out, linking health benefits to being active. A lot of us, I would imagine, in public health and health education had grandiose ideas that doing educational programming and informing individuals on what the recommendations are would have the great results of people changing their behaviors and being more active. And certainly when I entered into the public health world, I very much fit in this. I'm going to educate people big time, and I'm going to have conversations around why being physically active is important. What are some programs to engage in? And everyone is going to do it, and it's going to be great. Where most of the time that's not the case, and we need some other components to that to help change behavior. And as Dr. Ferries mentioned, there are some scientific results, and there is some evidence on what potentially can help support and change human behavior as it relates to activity. And I link in this study as well, and I should have put it in the notes too, but I'll send Andy a direct link to this study for y'all's review as well, just in case it interests you. But this was a large systematic review of 750 freely accessible physical activity-based websites, and it looked at a lot of what those websites included based off of the evidence. So it looked at the evidence on where positive outcomes related to physical activity were found in the literature, and then it compared all of those to some freely accessible websites. And we'll describe a little bit more about why websites are important, especially as it relates to Walk Across Texas. But as we're going through this session, I encourage you to reflect on some of these positive physical activity outcomes, and how we purposefully, as we developed the Walk Across Texas program, and as we continuously develop and improve the Walk Across Texas program, that we are taking a theoretical approach, that we feel confident that our intervening tool, or the website and the program, we're using the best evidence in order to hopefully help generate a physical activity change and behavior change in our target audiences. And so we purposefully tap into a self-monitoring approach where the individual is tracking and logging miles as part of the program. There is a purposeful goal as part of the program as well. We really tap into social support as well, in particularly with the team approach that we take. And then I won't go through all of them, but it'll be a consistent theme throughout the entire session that will link back to each of these theoretical components. But just know that when the study came out, and it's been about 6 years, so there's certainly been a lot of innovation with physical activity programs that use websites and that use team approaches in the past 6 years. But know at that point, when this study came out, that a lot of the theoretical approaches to behavior change were not found in a lot of the freely accessible physical activity-based programs. So that's kind of a defining niche where we really hone into as part of the Walk Across Texas program, that hopefully we feel confident that the program does provide evidence. And as Andy alluded to leading into this session, we are really excited about a recent publication in the BMC Public Health that looks at that, in particularly in our adult version of the program. It looked at data from a couple of years ago, and we did find that it was able to help increase and maintain physical activity in not only those who self-reported being active, but as we're thinking of engaging an audience who's no active, who are not active or low active, where they're not meeting physical activity guidelines and recommendations, getting them to a point where they are establishing that habit of regular physical activity. And then we're now starting to think on how do we maintain that post the program, because the program does have a time duration. It is an 8-week program. So what are some of the considerations that we have on how we maintain that? So we now have this evidence that we can increase and we can maintain physical activity throughout the program. Now, after the program's done, how do we maintain that and how do we sustain that? Which we're working on a publication as well on that, based on a follow-up survey that we conducted. But I encourage you to look at the press release. I encourage you to share the press release as you're going out and engaging audiences, task force, different audiences to promote and market the program. This could be a great tool that, especially with a worksite wellness or a county-based program, that they're really focused on the evidence and making sure that their time and investment in a program can lead to success. That we really do have that as part of the program. And so there's more information that I'd be happy to share with you on that, but we do have a press release as well as a link to the study in the slide deck. So just an overview of the Walk Across Texas program. Our goal with extension, I mentioned it briefly, but this puts it in text, is that our goal with the program is to help people of all ages and abilities establish that habit of regular physical activity in their lives. So that's our goal. That may not necessarily be an individual participant who registers for the program. That might not be their goal, but our big goal with why it's important to us is to hopefully help encourage the habit, because we know the health benefits, we know the economic benefits of being more physically active. uh, can do for an individual. And so we really want to hone in on that and hopefully help people meet those physical activity guidelines and recommendations. The program goal, though, however, the motivational tool for why a participant would want to engage in the program is that they have a certain goal as a team, which each team has the goal to walk or log miles to virtually navigate across Texas. And there is a traditional route that we use that is challenging yet attainable for a team of up to 8 adult members. We'll get into the distinct versions of the program in the next slide, but that's so it's the original route is from Orange, Texas to El Paso. So Orange, Texas, Beaumont area to El Paso as the crow flies, which is roughly 832 miles. It is a challenging yet attainable goal, although other locally different counties incorporate some other motivational tools to help continue to encourage those who might reach that goal rather quickly. Because sometimes we do engage more active participants as well, which is, for us, that's great in terms of modeling. Those more active might be able to model and provide social support for those no active, low active who are beginning to maybe engage in activity for the first time, or maybe engaging in purposeful activity for the first time, or even more than they've done in the past. So we like that, but it also helps, but also having those more active individuals on teams tend to reach this goal maybe a little bit quicker. And so what are those other things that we could do to help continue to encourage? Another big component, since it is team-based, is oftentimes there is some sort of challenge as part of the programs where teams are using what's called social comparison, but teams are competing against each other to see who could walk across Texas first, who could walk the furthest distance. Again, we sometimes have reservations with that, as the more active teams tend to get those miles a little bit quicker, so it can be discouraging to those who maybe are participating for the first time. So we'll talk about some ways and some strategies on how to continue to motivate those who maybe might not be the top 3 teams within a county. What are some of those other things that we could do to help kind of build in some incentives and build in some door prizes for those so we could keep on that motivation train. But no, in short, at least for this slide's purpose, that the program goal is that each team will virtually walk across Texas towards some mileage goal. Our first recommendation is going to be that 832, and to tap into that and utilize that. But then there are some other things and some other routes that we could build in to continue that motivation. So 2 distinct versions of the program that we're going to talk about today, and I will let my colleague in the BLT State Office, Renda, who has, I think, the last session of the day, talk about what the BLT focused program will be. But for Walk Across Texas purpose, 2 distinct versions, one for an adult audience. And so it is an 8-week program. That's the program duration. It does have that original in concept 832 mileage goal. Each team member in the adult version must register and create an Howdy Health account and join a team. And then that individual also keeps track of their daily mileage throughout the program. So it is 8 weeks, so there are 56 data points by days to enter in mileage. And that's very purposeful, that an individual takes on that responsibility so that they have the knowledge and awareness of their activity. They have an opportunity in their pre-survey to set an individual goal, so they can kind of keep track on how they're doing on that. It also creates kind of some knowledge and awareness on they're getting information on, by engaging into the website, they're getting information on where their team's at, where their team members are at. So they're looking at a little social comparison there. They could also compare their team against other teams. And so we really want to engage engage individuals into the website so they start seeing that information and creating that knowledge and awareness and on where they are. And so hopefully that's a motivating tool for them to continue to enter in their mileage and continue to see their team progress across their route. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, each adult team may have up to 8 team members. And that was purposefully designed to create that challenging yet attainable goal of meeting the physical activity guidelines and recommendations. Generally, for adults, 150 minutes per week. We use mileage as our entry point, but it's roughly around that, which on an individual level, it's roughly 104 miles per person through the whole program. Which if you break it down by week, it's about 13 miles per week. That's individual's kind of challenger goal to meet. So that's the adult version. We do have a youth version as well. That is a completely distinct version. It is still, framework-wise, it is still 8 weeks. It does still have an original 832-mile goal. The big difference on this one is we don't take any individual demographic information from youth participants. So they are not going to the website and registering themselves. So this gives us a little bit of flexibility of allowing an unlimited number of youth participants per team. And this is purposeful as well because our biggest youth audience is typically the school setting. And so often schools have classrooms, they have PE classes, they have running clubs, they have boys and girls clubs, after school clubs, where it might be easier and more feasible to just have a team based off of whatever that session or whatever that classroom setting looks like. It makes data management a little bit easier for those that we maybe identify at the school who are helping us enter in the data. As well as for us internally, if we're taking on entering in data, it makes it a little bit more manageable than breaking down into different teams. And then on an individual level, taking individual level data in youth tends to be a little bit more tricky. And so we keep it a little bit more flexible. With it being more flexible, mileage entry is weekly and it is based off that team. So if you have a classroom of 20 youth, you're recording that mileage for the week. Let's say that classroom does 2 activity kind of brain breaks every single day for 10 minutes. So it would be about 20 minutes of activity that they're incorporating into the classroom, which would be generally about 1 mile. You have 20 folks, it'd be about 20 miles for that day. And then for the week, let's say it's 5 times, it's about 100 miles for that classroom that you would enter into the website. Now, you might ask yourself, they'll probably reach the goal rather quickly that way, that 832-mile goal. So we do have a couple of more opportunities to engage in a couple of more different routes to make it a little bit more challenging for the youth audience. That 832-mile goal was specifically built for the adult version of the program. When the program was designed in 1996 and created and developed. And so now that we've expanded to a distinct version for youth audience, we have to be smarter on what are some of those longer routes that we can continue to make sure that our youth are continually motivated. Honestly, youth typically are motivated by the team competition and going classroom by classroom and kind of using the school setting as that kind of team social comparison, team comparison versus the mileage goal. But I encourage you to ask your host county extension agent on kind of what's typically the best way to do that and manage that. And it might also be based on your audience and what's feasible for them and what they want to do. You might only be able to implement in one classroom. You might be implementing across the entire school. So we do have, as part of the youth program, adult teams can compete against the youth teams. This is helpful. It's in the same system. This is really helpful if you have some parents that want to be involved, or some staff or teachers that want to be involved, but they don't want to do the individual daily mileage tracking. They just want to contribute towards the goal, or they want to compete on the same level, since it does allow unlimited number of participants per that team. Sometimes the whole staff just wants to compete against all of the different classrooms, and you might be able to engage 20, 30 staff that kind of want to use that setting as kind of a competition against the youth team, or just they just don't want to. Schools typically have a lot of other time commitments, especially those that are engaged in the school audience, that the adult version of the program may not be feasible. So it kind of allows us to generate some data, allows us to, for them to record and track so they could compare themselves to the youth with not being as rigorous as the true adult version of the program and how it's implemented. More information on that is available if you need it. As I mentioned, it is a web-based program, and so we do have a couple of websites that I want y'all to be familiar with. And I'm getting a little bit scared on time, so I'm going to run through this a little bit quickly. But in terms of program resources for participants, this website right here, walkacrosstexas.org, walkacrosstexas.tmu.edu, also redirects to it. This houses all of our program resources for external clientele. And so it has a bunch of lesson plans. It has some one-pagers for you to print out. Essentially, it's just kind of a program overview, and it's intended for an external audience. You could use it as kind of a Master Wellness volunteer, as well as for those host county extension agents or others in the room that are listening. There are resources that you could print out and market and promote. But these are also great resources for identified site leaders outside of the extension umbrella, for them to print out and promote if they're involved in that, as far as marketing and promoting the program. So I encourage you to look at that, and I encourage you to review that. But in terms of program implementation, so where people are registering for a Howdy Health account, where people are logging in order to join the actual program, youth version or adult version, as well as keeping track. Oh, my light went out. Sorry, I'm not moving enough. Where they're tracking their mileage, as well as filling out their pre-program assessments and evaluations. Okay, there we go. I was a little fuzzy there, I think, with the light change, but this website right here that's listed, again, you have the slide deck. I encourage you to review it. I encourage you to create an account and navigate through it. This is where all of the program implementation is navigated through. Your host county extension agent will have a lot more information on this, and we also have some tutorial videos that kind of help describe some of the major framework of kind of navigating this this website. You can see it's all mobile friendly on the right here. It's all mobile friendly. It's all tablet friendly. So once participants are going to the website, it's super easy to navigate on the phone for people on the run or on the walk, no pun intended. So getting started. So that's a brief overview of the program and the framework and the design. So what are some of the major tasks if you're a Master Wellness volunteer that's thinking about implementing, or that might be tasked with implementing this program as part of your responsibilities within the county? Some of the major overarching themes that I see that we need to do to maximize success of your Master Wellness volunteer role is first going to be identifying your role in terms of implementing the program. Then, depending on your target audience, you're going to select various resources to maximize your success. One of the biggest success of kind of leading into the program, and one of the biggest components leading into the program, is going to be that promotion of Walk Across Texas, as well as continuing that motivation and communication throughout the 8 weeks of the program. Since it is web-based, those that two-way communication of us sending out resources, sending out updates throughout those 8 weeks are important to not only continue to build our connection with our participants and our rapport with them, but also to continuing to motivate and encourage them throughout it, because 8 weeks is a long time. And so having that two-way communication is going to be really important, that we don't lose people or general attrition throughout the program. We do our best to maximize the success of all of those who are engaging in the program. And one of the best ways to do that is going to be in organizing various events and organizing various incentives, which I'll highlight a couple of best practices of those. So 2 big ways that I see engaging and talking with Master Wellness volunteers on what their role is within communities. And one is agent support of implementation of the program. So your local county extension agent is kind of the face and leading the implementation of the program, and you're helping to support that agent. You're co-meeting with persons and groups that are participating in the program. You might be tasked with meeting them if the local agent isn't available, but you might be able to provide some resources and things like that, or help print some things prior to going to those meetings. You might also be tasked with assisting with website navigation as well as basic program questions, and also helping to maybe direct and locate program materials, where tutorial videos are, where screenshots are, where some registration tips and supports are. Then you might also be helping the local county extension agent with events, marketing, promotion throughout the program, as I mentioned, communication, or potentially another specific task. I'll rely on the local agents to be able to describe a little bit more information on what that looks like and fit it within their context or within your context, potentially even during the lunch hour when you get that opportunity. Some counties identify a Master Wellness volunteer individual as well as multiple Master Wellness volunteer individuals to lead implementation. So their primary role would be to provide entire leadership of the program locally. And that includes, but not limited to, kind of establishing potentially a Walk Across Texas task force or committee if there's not already existing. If there is one already existing, potentially meeting with those groups to provide resources to overview and introduce the program. And then again, a lot of these roles might be the same, but you just might be more in the front end, more kind of that direct contact, where the agent might be more on the back end and just being able to provide some support for you based on questions in case you're not familiar or need more information. And then you might be specifically leading some events in marketing and promotion as well. So once you've identified your role and you've identified what your audience is and how you're going to implement Walk Across Texas in your community or in your county, then the great idea is to how to select the various resources, because we do have a variety of resources that help you implement the program. And one, if you do have an adult audience, it could be community-wide work sites, homeowners associations, apartments, friends, families, schools, teacher. This would be for the adult version, focused on the teachers and staff. We do have various training and participation materials in terms of tutorial videos, as well as registration guides. We have some slide decks. If you have an opportunity to actually go and do a hands-on training, we do have those slide decks for you to facilitate those, as well as walk through people through the registration process, website navigation, etc. We do have some marketing and media resources, as well as some press releases, and then we have some example certificates as well for an adult audience. So those are our main resources for adult audiences. This is not comprehensive. This is not all-inclusive. So if you are looking for additional resources that might help support your efforts, please don't hesitate to reach out to certainly your local county extension agent, but also don't hesitate to reach out to the Walk Across Texas State Office as well, which I'll describe what that team looks like here in a little bit. If you have a youth audience, which typically, as I mentioned, is the school system, But we do have after-school clubs and programs like YMCA, Boys and Girls Clubs, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, etc., as well as 4-H clubs are a great youth audience to engage in, especially if they have a youth ambassador program where they might be implementing a particular program as part of one of their projects. We do have specific resources and educational materials based on that audience that specifically highlights the youth version of the program. Some of the additional WAT activities that we have as part of it, or resources that we have as part of the youth program, is our teacher lesson plans. We have 275 lesson plans that are targeted towards kindergarten through 10th grade that follow our state testing standards, in particularly important when you get to 3rd to 10th grade. And all follows our Texas Essential Knowledge, our TEKS, however you say it, as well as our STAR testing standards. We are going through a process where that might change in the summer, and we'll update and adapt once that guidance is released. But right now they are current, following those Texas Essential Knowledge, and there's a variety of those lesson plans, and a variety of those lesson plans can be adapted. There may be a 3rd grade lesson plan that's specifically focused on a certain math component that could be adapted for potentially an older audience as well. So we have some best practice tips on that. If you have a youth audience that really wants to integrate those lesson plans into the curriculum, we do have some best practice tips for that, as well as a resource guide as well. Parent newsletters. As we're talking about engaging a youth audience, certainly important to engaging, at least educationally, the adult audience as well. Because once the kiddos get out of the school time, they go home, and how, especially during the summertime too, how we continue to motivate physical activity and potentially reach an adult audience with either cross-marketing other extension programs that are focused on an adult audience, or just providing educational resources and materials on physical activity, fruit and vegetable intake, nutrition, etc. And then we also have a specific certificate for youth audience as well. That's another resource. Some best practice tips for what we see in terms of regular communication that a Master Wellness volunteer might take on is weekly report updates, sending out those parent newsletters either via email or something in particular that the school uses, or a work site uses if they have that, Outlook group, etc. Certain evidence-based resources or publications that Dr. Ferry's highlighted, as well as other extension-based programming materials. Dinner Tonight is a great, the Dinner Tonight videos as well as recipes might be a great kind of nutrition kind of focused educational resource that could go out in the weekly report updates to kind of cross-market. If you have a face-to-face in-person event going on, potentially with Dinner Tonight or another program, that would be that week maybe as a halfway point. It'd be a great way to cross-market and leverage your already existing audience. Certain events that you might see, we have assembly, family nights, certainly in the school system, field days and fairs, virtual tours, weekly walking groups, important for an adult audience if that's available, or if that's already existing in your community, might be a great group to tap into, or to start to get that face-to-face time and accountability during the program. We do have a marketing and media guide that's available for you that walks through a timeline of kind of the event planning based off of some best practices of implementing the Walk Across Texas program. So I encourage you to check that out on the website, and your local county extension agent might have that direct PDF already, or might have already shared that to you. In terms of hosting events, typically the framework and what we recommend is a kickoff event, so something to generate the motivation leading into the program, either on the day that the start date of the program or sometime around there, as a way to get some media attention, to get participants registered, and to get participants that have registered excited about the program. We also encourage a celebration or an end event that kind of just highlights and recognizes all of the great work that all the individuals and participants did throughout the program, and hopefully recognize those who have met the goal, either the virtual journey across Texas or some of the other goals that you may have incorporated, or some of the other challenges that you may have incorporated as part of your program. Since it is 8 weeks, we also recommend a kind of a midway event as well, around that 4 week, around 3 to 5 week time, just to kind of regenerate that kind of motivation as people are kind of halfway in. And we have some great ideas of what an agenda looks like, what some activities look like. Since in-person is a little bit harder, we've seen some great advancements and innovative approaches to some of these events, being virtual, hosted through Facebook Live, if that's something that you're comfortable with, or another means. So we'd be happy to share some of those ideas, as well as brainstorm some ideas as well, and some new ideas that y'all might bring to the program too, because I'd be naive to say that we have all the best practices and all the best strategies figured out already. And so your approach might be really important and something new that we might have not tried in the past. Some of those activities that are done during those events, I'll let you use this slide as a reference tool, and then kind of figure out what are some of the capacity and what are some of those assets that you have in your community that might help maybe fit under these themes or to be something completely new. In terms of incentives and door prizes, oftentimes people need more tangible incentives outside of just the encouragement of physical activity being the benefit and being the motivational tool. And so what are some of those incentives and door prizes, and what do those look like within your community? And what do you have, again, assets-wise, community, in-kind-wise, what could be donated as part of your program? Unfortunately, at least at the state office, we don't have an operating budget for the program. And so we do have to be strategic on how we leverage funds, how we generate maybe some in-kind donations, and using kind of a marketing push for maybe some of the local fitness centers, some of the local businesses, even if it's just timing wise for some other volunteers that are helping to support the program. What are some of the ways that we could be strategic and smart about some of those low cost and no cost options? Some of the, if there is an opportunity that you do have some flexible funds to support some of your incentives, we do have some examples on the website, and we do have a partnership with a local group here in College Station. This is only an opportunity to help maybe have these incentives, not have to worry about setting up artwork and things like that, but just know you could get more information on that. But if you do have the local capacity to produce some of these materials, I encourage you to do that. Some no-cost prizes and options and incentives that we see. Again, I'll let you review this slide deck once you have it. We certainly haven't figured it all out. If there are some things that work best in your local community that are low and no cost, I highly encourage you to use them. I see Andy on the screen, so I'm going to have to run through. I just have two really short slides real quick, but in terms of support and next step, we are here to help. And there are a variety of ways for you to get support as part of the Walk Across Texas program. We have a help desk that's managed by now 3 to 4 individuals. That's typically the best response since it is programmatic focus. We do have FAQs that we update based off of those help desk responses, which is why we like encouraging people to go to there. Because oftentimes even though you're the local face, you're kind of also that middle person sometimes that it might be an issue that you might not be able to address. So we really like kind of getting that feedback via that help desk so we could start identifying some themes that we could address at a state level in terms of resources or education or an additional FAQ. We have those training videos and PowerPoints as I recommended. We have the Walk Across Texas state staff. We have myself, a web applications developer who manages kind of the technical side, the website side, and a couple other student support. So we're really pleased with that. And then, of course, your local county and host county extension agent is also a great resource, or others who have implemented the program within the office. I will wrap up with an encouragement that you check us out on our social media pages. In 2020, we're trying out a couple of different strategies on some of the content that we use on those, or that we share on those pages. In particularly on Wednesdays, we're going to start doing kind of a Watt Wednesday focus, where we highlight something about the program, or we highlight a local event that's doing some great work or some new innovative strategies. So we really want to generate some more engagement and some conversation on our social media, Facebook, Twitter specifically. So I encourage you to connect with us. I will end with just thanking you for your efforts. And I know this was a really quick primer and introduction to the program. Master Wellness volunteers are so imperative to a wide variety of tasks that are involved in the Walk Across Texas program, in the success of the Walk Across Texas program. I didn't have a slide for it, but last year we had our best programmatic year in program history. So over 23 years, had our highest participation. And it's really due to the local sponsored events, in my opinion, and the local people that are just experts in implementing the program. My role is to just be a resource for you and to help provide potentially some direction and best practices. But really, it lives and dies with local implementation, and a lot of that is through amazing Master Wellness volunteer support. And if direct implementation of the program is not your thing, there are a variety of other ways to be engaged and involved in the program, if that engagement is just not something that you're super interested in. So just know that there are a variety of different tasks, and we're just here to support your efforts. So thank you, Andy, the organizing committee, and everyone else. And I will pause there. I did not see if anyone posted anything in the chat box. It doesn't look like it. So it looks like I'm the session in between y'all and lunch, I think. So I'll pause there with a prompt to please reach out if you need more or want more information.
Thanks, Mike. We appreciate the update on Walk Across Texas, and congratulations on the new evidence showing that the program works. And that's great to see. Please do reach out to Mike if you've got questions. Work through your local county extension agent. Mike mentioned the help desk, and later when you start your online courses, we're going to commend the help desks to you a lot, because there are some things that, you know, other people are better equipped to handle. It's not that we don't want to hear from you or help you solve problems, but those links to contact the help desk are important. They're not meant to put you off. Also, if you can't afford a Fitbit, or you don't want to buy a Fitbit, let me commend to you the automatic light switch in Mike's office, which will encourage you to be physically active in at least 15-minute intervals. So thanks again, Mike. We appreciate you sharing with us.